Oh, hello. So, Gary Vaynerchuk style, just looking at the camera, huh? I give you guys the goods, man. Panorama, I'm dressed differently every time I make a video. I'm out there in nature, all this kind of stuff, talking about all kinds of interesting other stuff, side notes and whatnot. I mean, that's one of my biggest faults, the digressions and whatnot, I guess, but just think about the fact, my dear viewer, that I give you the goods. I really put my heart and soul and mind and whatnot, use as much intelligence as I can putting these little flicks together. And obviously the rest of it's just stream of consciousness. I'm not really into the whole prepared notes kind of thing. Although, I mean, prepared notes are pretty cool for what it's worth. I guess, you know, moderation's the key. Probably having some key points and not a rambling series of digressions. So I saw Sam Harris yesterday online somewhere, and he's sitting there, and obviously, as I hate to put people down. Our 60 Imam, peace be upon him, the great grandson of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and his family, Imam Sadiq, said in what I call the world's first self-help book, just Google it, Lantern of the Path, 99 chapters, each chapter is a page, and it's on things like, well, not character building and motivation and nonsense like that, but, you know, obviously gratitude and patience and generosity and sincerity, you know, spiritual virtues. The average man thinks of material gain and material virtues, you could call them, possessions and all this shite. Then not the spiritual man's out the other end of the spectrum. In between we have the self-help gurus. Okay, now they're playing on this nonsense here, saying, well, you can just maximize all of that and it's not about any of that. And then they'll be talking about obviously motivation, positive mental attitude. Positive thinking is rubbish as far as I'm concerned. If you're in a bad mood, you can't think good thoughts, and if you're in a good mood, you can't think bad thoughts. You can think, oh my God, my mum's death is imminent, and be in a good mood, in a good state of mind, in a state of grace or whatever, you'll be like, that's a part of life. You'll be in total equanimity, as Buddhists like to say. Anyhow, material person doesn't really understand the motivational person because he's just locked into his material world. Motivational guy's building on that, and then he takes steps towards spirituality with things like The Secret of Success or The Law of Success. It's on Netflix, by the way. I'm not saying it's a bad watch. Anything's a good watch if you're interested in it. Apart from porn, I guess. Gratuitous violence is alright too. You know, you have kids getting blown up nowadays. You might as well just, like, anything is, there's no limits. If a child can be exposed to that kind of stuff in real life, let alone the news, then I say just bring it on. It's like people who see me swearing or hear me swearing in public when I go on one of my mad rants. You think I'm bad on these videos? You should see me in real life. Actually, you shouldn't. It would probably leave you with a mild to distasteful impression on things in general, not just yourself. Digression and another digression, going to Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, where Johnny Depp is snorting coke off some guy's arm in a bar bathroom nightclub, and it's like psychedelia, tripping on acid, and they're just going crazy. And then some square comes in, guy in a suit and something, he's just sitting there for a drink, and he sees these guys just getting off, and later on they show him furtively at the bar sitting there like this, and Johnny Depp's voiceover is saying something like, and by the way, in that scene, Hunter S. Thompson, the great and generous man, generous in the sense of he gave it his all, and that's all you can be expected to do, right? And he didn't expect anything in return, and he got everything in return. Johnny Depp's like, and the guy will never know, it will always be haunted by this feeling that there's people beyond his ken of understanding that basically, you know, are experiencing things that he may never understand. Okay, material, self-help gurus, steps towards spirituality, right? And spirituality is not the end-all, by the way. Religion is the end-all, and God, right? Spirituality, we're getting to meditation. We're getting into the metaphysical. We're getting into the basically mumbo-jumbo, unless you have some context, which is, okay, let's say we reincarnate. Let's say I believe we reincarnate. But who put the whole thing together? This soul system where you have insects coming in one end, and then the karmic vehicle, and then you're coming out humans, and then you're coming back as a bird, and all this nonsense infinite number of times. Seems pretty absurd to me, unless somebody explains where it all began, and you know, some diametrics and all this kind of stuff. Anyhow, law of success, all this rubbish, and it actually is a nice segue into Sam Harris. Let's move along to spirituality, get help with the motivational and material stuff. Now, Sam Harris has a new book out. Sam Harris is a world-renowned atheist. I used to love the guy, by the way. I thought so highly of him. Why? Because the only person I had to compare him to was Richard Dawkins. And by the way, your 60 mom said, don't speak bad of anyone. It's just, don't do it. Unfortunately, with these guys, I feel I have to, because it's a case of a person who is a flagrant lout, L-O-U-T, deserves to be vilified and exposed and branded as such in public. Gossiping is not allowed except for, you know, those people who are so engrossed in their vices that it becomes a necessary public duty to expose them, or at least bring the general public's attention out of their asses into the light of day, whereby they can understand that these things are influencing them in a big way. Oh man, what does the price of oil have to do with me? Oh, now everybody knows what the price of oil has to do with you, right? Gas station and prices and all this nonsense. I'm going around in circles, I know. But Sam Harris is, obviously, as the more successful he becomes, it seems the more like of a role he is adopting in terms of what we all do. I'm the same way. You know, if I thank God I'm not successful in many respects, because it's the ultimate killjoy. It's the ultimate killjoy. Oh my God, somebody just mentioned me on Twitter. Oh my God, poor somebody I slagged actually came back with some tepid response, and I got to go and apologize to him, to his dumb ass. Some response is better than none, right? That's what they say in hardcore sales. Like, you want to rile your customer up, basically get him emoting. Beautiful word most people don't know about. E-M-O-T-E, to display emotion. That which gets you to emote, essentially. So Sam Harris, spirituality. Okay, his book's called Waking Up or something. Spirituality without religion. Now, it's nonsense. If you just think about what I'm about to say, it's all rubbish. See, my whole thing is this. I listened to a TED speech of Sam Harris's. At that point, I'd just written the No God Delusion. You go to my blog, go to books, it's there. The whole damn thing's there. Richard Dawkins wrote a 350-page book saying that believing in God is a delusion, without even holding out the possibility that there may be a God. Now, here's the thing. If an atheist could actually provide me with an alternative theory that was plausible, I would hold to it. In fact, I do say that a person should hold, as I do, I really do, that whatever you think you know or believe or whatever it is, you could not only be not correct, you could be absolutely 180 degrees the opposite of the actual truth of the matter, except for there being a God and one God. That's the only thing that seems like it has to be the real thing, in sense of, like, I'm not real because I didn't create myself. I don't control anything about myself. I don't know nothing about nothing. I'm not really real. I could just be a thought or some damn thing. You know, what is it to be sentient? We think we're all that. We may not even be real. Like, there's a beautiful poem by Iqbal, an Urdu poet. And I always say that Urdu poetry is the bomb, and Urdu poets are the masters of poetry. And people don't understand this thing, just like they don't understand other things in life. And unfortunately, people like me feel like it's their duty to explain things to people like that and all this kind of nonsense. So, Sam Harris, listen to him on TED. And at that point in time, I only had, what's his name? Richard Dawkins to compare him to. For every page Richard Dawkins wrote, I wrote 2 pages in response. I started reading his damn book. My sister had mentioned it, and I found it on my friend's Robbie's house. I couldn't even go through it without writing rebuttal. Every argument of his I rebutted, if not twice or thrice. Every study he put out there, I researched. Every quote, most of them out of context, a lot of them. Founding fathers talking about English clergy, and he's taking that to be a basically a riposte against religion in general, which is not the case. All of the founding fathers were devout, faithful people, and some of the most incredible people that have ever existed. Lost their families, lost their houses, lost everything for this noble ideal of theirs, which was screw the freaking, not the British, but, you know, the crown and the clergy. Double C, man, double whammy, man. Dark ages, suppression, oppression, imperialism, all this nonsense, man. And they come out here and they start this great nation which has gone down the same tubes, unfortunately. Sam Harris, and he had this at the time, this thing called The Landscape of Morality. Okay, I'm at 10 minutes already and I haven't said jack. And then I'm going to call this thing Answering Sam Harris, and people are going to be like, the 2 or 3 people who actually click play by mistake are going to be like, this is nonsense. He doesn't say nothing about nothing because it's hidden in the middle of all that garbage. Here's what it is. I heard him talk about morality, and I heard just the gist of what he was saying, and my whole thing is this, and it's something I'm really bad at, but in works of fiction, you can open them anywhere, and it's just the same. You should be caught up in the flow of things, period. Work of non-fiction should all be summarized at the beginning of the work of fiction. So therefore, the title is a marketing thing. It may or may not say everything. It should, but in a way that you don't really understand until you've read the thing, ideally. First line encapsulates the first paragraph, encapsulates the first page, encapsulates the first chapter, encapsulates the whole goddamn book. Just like Imam Ali, peace be upon him, said that the whole of the Quran is summarized in the first 7 verses, the chapter Alhamd, praise. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. And that chapter is summarized in the opening verse, which is the same verse on every Quranic chapter except one. All 114 chapters, rather 113, barring one, start with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Rahman means mercy giver, Rahim means mercy giver. In the name of Allah, the mercy giver, times 2. Mercy giving twice, once to everyone, and once to people who obey him specifically and actually are good people. Anyhow, I very quickly want to say that landscape of morality, brilliant stuff. Let's have a scientific paradigm for morality. And funny enough, that's a chapter I finished at with Richard Dawkins. I'm basically like, once I get this thing published and anyone reads it, I'll write the rebuttal part to it. It's all rubbish. There's nothing in there of any value to anyone who has the brain that surpasses that of a 15-year-old. How can you have spirituality in a scientific world? There's no such thing. You guys compare religion and science as being, you juxtapose them as being opposites, whereas they're not. Just yesterday or the day before, the scholar I was listening to at the gathering commemorating the martyrdom of Imam Husain, peace be upon him, at the Battle of Karbala, he said the same thing. You've got the Quran, but then you've got the book of the universe, nature, and God's flipping the pages, and you see birds and all this crazy stuff, which is just an accident, right? So spirituality doesn't go with science, period. Okay? Now here's the second thing he says. He says, all religions are garbage based on what we know of scientific fact. Well, what about the good parts of them? Are you going to throw the whole thing, baby out with the bathwater? I say Islam doesn't have any errors in it, by the way. Okay, but what about science itself? Science itself says that it's only a description of something that's out there, and it will never be other than an approximation. So let's get rid of all the science, shall we, while we're at it? And then he goes, religions are non-compatible, and he quotes Bertrand Russell. Oh my God, if you follow one religion, therefore all the others go to hell. Quran's not like that. It says we give every nation its own rights of worship, and that if we wanted to, it would make you all one religion, and Jews and Christians and Sabians, they all go to heaven if they believe in God and do good, etc., etc. The last thing he said, I have no idea. Oh yeah, he says obviously you don't need spirituality in order to be, you don't need a religion in order to be spirituality. Here's the whole thing with spirituality. The ultimate is meditation. You know what? I'd rather not think of nothing. I'd rather think of something. Go look up David Lynch. Look up transcendental meditation. And understand there is a greater intelligence out there. And it's sentient. There's something out there. There is some being out there. And if you don't approach things from that perspective, you're just drifting off in the darkness. Hey, this is amazing. I actually said what I wanted to. And I'm coming up on 15 minutes. So I doubt anyone's going to pay any attention to this rambling rubbish as most people would have it. But there you go, Sam Harris. I'm looking forward to talking to you one day, my man. You're a good man, just a bit bent out of shape or something.